Hi everybody, welcome to another makeover. As soon as I saw this dressing table, I wanted to make two pieces of furniture out of this. Actually three. A desk out of the top part and two nightstands out of the drawers part. We also had a matching dresser, so it would be a nice set. And there was a little bench with a dressing table, which I didn't film, but I was going to use it to recreate the matching tops for the nightstands. Actually, I started working on the desk first, but I'm not showing it today because I wasn't happy with the result and I'm going to be restoring it soon. And you will see it in one of the next videos. Today I'm showing you the second part, the nightstands and the dresser. And first thing first, I needed to separate the drawers from the top. I removed the backboard and I measured everything to make a perfect cut, but I didn't do a guide, which I had to. My cut wasn't straight enough, which caused me some troubles later. So remember, it's better to use a guide. And 5 months later, I finally started working on the nightstands, because they were buried in my furniture stash. And here's this little bench which I'm going to disassemble to use the sides as the tops for my nightstands. There were lots of spots with chip veneer, but this one was the biggest one. And I had on hands my accidentally handmade veneer. When I was working on the other project, I accidentally cut a thin layer of walnut and I saved it. And it so happened that the thickness of my veneer was the same as the thickness of the stick veneer. First, I cut the edges of this chipped veneer to make it more convenient to work. And then I used the tape to create a template, and then I transferred the template onto the piece of my veneer. I used the wood glue and I clamped the spot and let it sit for about 1 hour. And then I just cut the edges with the knife. Like I said before, I had tons of spots with chipped veneer and I repeated exactly the same steps for almost each and every spot. It was time to strip an old varnish and I tried to take off the pulls, but it didn't work. That piece was very well made and the pulls were glued to the drawers and I couldn't remove it without wrecking the veneer. As you can see, I tried to scrape the varnish, but it was kind of awkward, so I had to use a stripper. And something unexpected happened. My Ika stripper, which I was obsessed with, it didn't work well. You'll see it in a minute, but I don't know what happened. I don't know why it happened. It has never happened before. My guess that there was this particular canister or maybe the lot of the canister. Maybe they were not stored right. I don't know. But the stripper changed the color of the veneer. At first I didn't suspect anything because it looked like that before. There were spots, but as soon as it dried, everything became even, the color became even, but not this time. Just in case on the other parts, I decided to use my chemical stripper, and that was the right decision. When I started sanding the drawers, I saw they were kind of blotchy, but I was hoping that after sanding it would disappear. I sanded the drawers with 120 and then with 180 grit sandpaper. And after sanding, my drawers looked like this. I was so disappointed, and the only solution I had use oxalic acid. Try using oxalic acid. And thanks God it worked. I applied oxalic acid twice, and after the second coat, those stains were no longer visible. And here's the consequences of my not perfect cut at the very beginning. The sides of the both nightstands were not even, and when I tried to make them even, the top drawers wouldn't fit in their places. They were touching the top of the nightstands, so I had to add the height to each side of the nightstand. But first I had to level the sides, and the only solution I came to was to add the wooden plank to the sides. You can see that plank. I'm using it as a guide right now, but later I will glue this plank to the each side of the 9 stands. But first I had to cut the sides, and I measured everything to make a perfect cut, and this time the cut was perfect. All cuts were perfect. I used the wood glue and I glued 4 planks to the 4 sides of the 9 stands. I clamped them and let them sit for about 2 hours. 2 hours later, I drilled the holes and I screwed the planks to the sides. While the glue was drying, I sanded the top parts with 120, 180 and finished with 220 grit sandpaper. And then I found out the other problem. My top parts were shorter than my nightstands. So I needed to make them longer. And guess what was the solution? Right, to add some planks to the top parts as well. Before that, I took care of some dents and scratches on the veneer. I sprayed the surface with water and I ironed dents over the damp cloth. It took me a while, but I was able to get rid of almost all dents and scratches. And I also patched some cheap veneer spots. To add the length to one of the tops, I used 2 pieces I cut off from the sides of the nightstands. I know that's complicated, but I improvised. I had 4 pieces because there were 4 sides, and I used 2 of them for one top, and the other 2 I couldn't use because they were not even, they didn't fit. So I had to cut the other piece of wood to add the length to the other top. Why didn't I cut 2 pieces of the same wood for the both tops? Because I thought they have the same matching veneer and it would be much easier to blend in these additional pieces, at least for the one nightstand. And then I clamped the both tops and let them sit over the night. And here's I want to apologize to you guys because every process I filmed, I was so into the process, so I accidentally moved the camera and I didn't film a lot because instead my camera was filming my elbow or my head or my feet. For example, like this, I accidentally moved the camera. It was supposed to film me cutting the planks, but instead it filmed my floor. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video so far. I know it's longer than usual, but there was a lot of work with this nightstands. And if you've made that far, that would mean the world to me if you give this video a thumb up and subscribe to my channel. I filled up the gaps with the wood filler, with this wood filler, and I'm obsessed with this wood filler. I hope it will not let me down like it happened with my Ica stripper, but for now, this is the best wood filler I have ever used. When the wood filler has dried, I sanded the both tops with 220 grit sandpaper. The inside part, one of the nightstands, needed my attention as well. I told you there was a lot of work. This is how the size of my nightstand looks like with the additional planks. And I filled the gaps with the same wood filler here. And for more serious repairs, I used plastic wood filler. It is like Bonda, but it's stainable. And when everything has dried, I sanded both nightstands with 180 and 220 grit sandpaper. My big walnut veneer patches were lighter than the other veneer. To blend them in, I stained them first with this water-based stain in the color Amaretto. I don't know how to pronounce the name of this brand right, Salmon or Saman. And I left it like this and let it dry. While the stain was drying, I primed and painted the sides of the drawers and sides of the pools. For the paint, I used Glidden Epic 100% acrylic paint. And this is the sample size of the paint I bought from Home Depot. Sometimes when I don't need a lot of paint, I buy the samples and it works for me. And from Home Depot, I always buy 100% acrylic paint, not a latex. To stain the piece, I used 2 different types of the stain. The first was the stain I had used before, And when that stain has dried, I applied Minwax oil-based gel stain in the color Golden Pecan. And I repeated exactly the same steps for the drawers. I used shellac to prime the bases of the nightstands. When it has dried, I lightly sanded the surfaces and then I painted them with the same glitter acrylic paint. I tried to blend in those additional planks, but I didn't like how it turned out, so I decided just to paint them. Finally, I was ready to put my nightstands together. I mean, to glue the tops to the bases, and I needed dowels for that. I screwed 4 holes in the top, and I screwed the same matching holes in the base. And no, I didn't do any major repairs to the other side of the bases because they were not visible, and it wasn't worth it to spend a lot of time trying to repair non-visible part. I just sanded them smooth with 220 grit sandpaper. And here's the moment of truth, putting the top onto the base. Da-da-da-da, and it fits. I put some weights on the top and let them sit over the night. We're almost there, guys. It was time to apply a top coat, and I decided to give a try to this brand of varnish. It's water-based top coat. And because I had used oil-based stain on the drawers, I let them dry before applying water-based top coat. I let them dry for more than 48 hours. I think about like 60 hours or something. And you can see me applying the top coat and it turning out white. And of course, it's water-based top coat. When you apply it, it's kind of white-ish and then it dries clear. But it looked kind of blotchy to me. It looked wrong. And I was kind of mad at myself for experimenting when I was almost at the finish line. But I come down, I let it dry, and it turned out just fine. And the durability of this top coat is excellent. Here's how my additional planks on the side look like. And they're kind of blended in with just a stain. They just needed to be touched up a little bit. I used the repair kit from Amazon. They're different brands, but they're pretty similar. And it is handy for repairs like this. When I was done with the repairs, I applied the top coat. For the base, I used the same water-based top coat, but I decided to stay in a safe zone, and for the body of the nightstands, I used oil-based poly. To refresh the drawers, I applied Harvard beeswax and orange oil. And do you remember that I had the dresser? And with the dresser, I did exactly the same as I did with the nightstands, except replacing the top. I stripped, sanded, iron dents and scratches, stained, primed and painted, and sealed with 3 layers of polyurethane. Let me remind what I started with. And here's the final result.